And we're all here live and in person and in color. But is this recording going to start? There it is. We're live and in color here for episode number 4 of Around the Cage. My name is Davidson Baker. I am the host of this podcast. Made possible and available to you by the MMATakeover.com and the Loudmouth Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday evening. It is UFC pay-per-view fight week for the first time since I've started doing this show, and we've got quite a bit to talk about. A panel fitting to help me talk about it, and so forth and so on. Starting with Mike Pendleton from BJPen.com. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Fred Kirby of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast. Fred, how are you doing, my man?
I am fantastic, bro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, no problem. Mike Straus, BJPen.com, Low Kick, amongst other things. How are we, man?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
And Robert Taylor to the MMA to the Max podcast. How are we doing, Mr. Taylor?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man. Appreciate all of you guys coming on. Just in case anybody somehow listening to this show has stumbled upon it without knowing how we do things around here, it's my least favorite part, but hey, we got to do it at some point. Panelists are rewarded with points, not by whether or not I agree with what they are arguing, but how well they back their arguments up. 4 questions asked in round 1 before elimination round comes into play. There I will cut off one person, and just so you guys know, I still do not know how to hang up on somebody in a group in this Skype. I haven't been able to figure it out. So, if that does happen to end up being you probably got to do it yourself, and it's a little bit awkward. But hey, man,
hey, son, you better not kick me off first.
I don't know how to do it yet.
Out of the bag, Jack.
I'm torn because I've been up since like 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning for work, and I'm ready for bed, but I don't like to lose.
Hey, man. Right. Hey, man. But aren't you out on the West Coast?
Yeah.
It's 5:42, so that's not terrible. That's not terrible.
No, it's not normally, just after the day I had. That's all.
Yeah, no, 100%. Absolutely. Well, we are going to say goodbye to someone after 4 questions, and another person will leave after the next one, and then the final round will reset the scores for the final 2, and I will ask a question that I did not send to them previously, so it'll be like a mystery round per se. I'm ready to get going. Everybody ready to go?
Yep. Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, and we start down in Fortaleza, Brazil, with a shifting of the tide, it seems, for a lot of people in the bantamweight division in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Did Marlon Moraes, though, with now 3 finishes in the first round against very legitimate and tough guys in the top 10 of that division. Mike P., we will start with you. Did Marlon Moraes take the title shot from Henry Cejudo on Saturday night?
I mean, if what's right is right, yes. I think we all know that, Dana wants to get rid of flyweights, and, maybe they look at Henry Cejudo as the guy to, jump up, give TJ his rematch at 135. But like you said, 3 first-round finishes in his last 3 fights. I think he absolutely – and he avenged his loss, right, against the Sun South. So he did it quickly and impressively. So it's really hard to deny a guy a title shot based off those results. And he started talking. So as we all know, in this day and age of rankings not meaning anything, once you talk, you usually get what's yours. So I think he did.
Mike Straus.
I agree with Pendleton, man. I mean, if you look at the bantamweight division, right, you have Moraes, who's sitting at 4. He just beat Assuncio at 3. Cruz is 2. Who knows what he's doing? He's injured. Garbrandt is booked. And then you have the champion. Okay. And then on the flip side of it, you have Cejudo, who just beat Dillashaw. You have a legit contender sitting right there at Benavidez. So it just makes sense. It's what should be done. I mean, if you have rankings, you got to follow them, right? It just makes sense.
Fred.
Listen, it does make sense for him to get that shot, but this ain't the old school UFC. You understand me? The Fertittas are gone. Joe Silva's gone. And what sells now are money fights. Did y'all see that suit that Henry Cejudo was wearing last time they were around? That fake snake he pulled out of that bag? I didn't think he had a shot in the dark, but now that he did it and he knocked him out in 30 seconds, and I'm one of the people who actually feels like that fight got stopped early too. So yeah. I'm in the boat that they got to run that back. Marlon Moraes definitely deserves the shot, but life ain't fair. the sexy money fight, ironically enough, is now Henry Cejudo. And that pains me to say that, but it's true.
Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides on this. When Fred was talking about with the sexy money fight, the UFC lately has become a "what have you done for me lately" type of company. So yeah, we all saw what Cejudo did to TJ Dillashaw, but more recently, we just saw what Marlon Moraes did and has been doing. I think the right thing to do would be to give to Cejudo the shot at the bantamweight title. They did talk about that before the original flyweight title shot, but I mean, you poll people, fans everywhere, all over social media. They're not talking about Cejudo and Dillashaw anymore. They're talking about Marlon Moraes and Dillashaw. And that to me, that's the fight to make. I think that's the fight to make. It's the fight they should have made over the Cody Garbrandt rematch, in my
10
opinion.
10 seconds, pause.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Cool. Fred with 9, Mike P with 8, Mike S and Robert with 7. And we move on to question number 2, and move up 10 pounds to the featherweight division. How about Jose Aldo turning back the clock and yet again for his second fight in a row, shutting down a potential number 1 contender, first Jeremy Stevens and now Renato Moicano, both with strikes. And would you? And I'll start with Robert on this one. Kind of go backwards a little bit. Would you rather see a fight between he and Ortega or he and Volkanovski next? Given that Aldo probably isn't going to be getting another title shot anytime soon, and has kind of relished in this quote unquote gatekeeper role for a title shot per se. Robert, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't like the idea of Aldo fighting anybody in contendership right now, just for the simple fact that he's not going to be around after this year. He plans on fighting and retiring, and he's done. If he keeps fighting these contenders and knocking them off like he did Moicano, you're out of contenders. What does Holloway do? So, I mean, I know Volkanovski wants to fight, but nah, he just knocked off Moicano. We don't need another contender knocked off. Just let Aldo do money fights. Let him move up to lightweight. Just anything other than that. I don't want to see him knocking off any more contenders. I hate when the UFC does that.
Definitely makes sense. Fred.
Yeah, man, listen, I feel that, but there's just something about that Brian Ortega fight. I hate to keep using the word sexy, but man, that's a sexy fight. Like and I know nobody wants to see Jose get another crack at the belt. I get it. And as long as Max Holloway's got the belt, like that's a hard fight to sell. But I almost feel like a lot like with what they might be doing with Anderson Silva, we should give him that chance. Brian Ortega is a formidable opponent. If you can get that finish, then screw it. Give him another title shot on the way out the door. Like you said, he's going to retire anyways. So why not? I mean, I know it's a hard fight to sell, but that Brian Ortega fight will be a great fight. And I think that's a fight that the whole MMA community can get behind right now. So
my guess.
At first I was on board with the Ortega Aldo fight. I was like, I thought that was the fight to make right when I first read the question. But then I looked into it a little more and I'm like, no, you know what? I think the Volkanovski fight is the fight I'd rather see. Of course, you mentioned he's kind of like this number 1 contender killer. That fits that bill. But more so, I don't want to see Brian Ortega in a fight against Jose Aldo right after that beating that he took. I think there's no softballs in the UFC, but you could definitely give him a more favorable matchup. And I think so. It's not that I don't want to see Aldo versus Ortega. It's more so that if that's my option, if it's Volkanovski and Ortega at this point, I'd rather see Volkanovski just because of the beating that he's coming off of.
Mike P.
With that said, I mean, I would like to see Ortega fight Aldo next because I just want to see Ortega's recovery skills. Like, imagine Aldo chewing up his leg again, and I want to see how he bounced back in a week after Max beat him up. But in all seriousness, I think, we all looked at what he's done to Aldo, what he's done to Ortega, and we just say there's no more contenders. Well, we still haven't gotten the Frankie Edgar fight. Volkanovski's still sitting there. I think you can book him. Maybe Moicano. I'm not exactly sure who I'd have Volkanovski fight if it's not Jose Aldo. But with a lot of people don't want to see Aldo get another title shot, and Ortega's coming off a loss in a title fight. So I'd like to see those two go at it.
Okay. Awesome. We're all pretty much knotted up. Nearly. Fred with 16 and the other 3 with 15 through 2 rounds. Pretty good stuff. We head to number 3 and move a little bit away from Brazil and onto like the aforementioned pay-per-view that is this weekend. Now, obviously, this card is very highly acclaimed at the top and kind of trickles down a little bit once you move down, kind of like last year's UFC 221 card in Perth. I feel like it was the same situation there. But Mike S., I will start with you. Is the winner of this weekend's co-main event between Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva, both of them have hinted they're next for whoever wins in the main event. Are you buying that?
You know, I am. And again, if we're going off the rankings, just let's take a look at them, right? You have the middleweight division. So let's play it out. You have one, Yoel Romero, he's booked. Luke Rockhold, he's no longer in the middleweight division. Souza, he just got beat by both the guys in the main event. Then you have Chris Weidman, again, he's going up. Then you have Israel. So if Israel wins, he should get the next shot. And then, hey, if Anderson Silva wins, and who really thinks he's going to, if he does beat the number 6 ranked guy in the world, then give him a shot on the way out. Who cares? It's Anderson Silva. So I think, yeah, do it.
Mike P.
Well, I'm going to steal it from Stylebender, and apparently a lot of people don't know what this means. But I love the analogy that Anderson got honey-dipped into taking the fight. Like, don't worry, Anderson. If you win, we're giving you the title shot. Yeah, no, it's not happening. The only person getting a title shot off this fight is Stylebender. And I love the way the UFC negotiated this with Anderson. Like, we know you only got a few fights left, but we'll give you a title shot. Just sign the contract. I really do think this is just a way to put Adesanya on the biggest stage possible without giving him a title shot just yet, letting him beat a legend, and then going, look, he beat Anderson Silva. Yeah, I mean, it would be a great win for Anderson, but I don't think he'd get a title shot if he won.
Robert.
Yeah, the winner's definitely getting a title shot, in my opinion. While most people, pretty much the majority, don't see Anderson Silva having a chance to win this fight, if he somehow does miraculously pull it off, he's getting the title shot. I mean, they gave Dan Henderson a title shot based off of sentiment and everything against Michael Bisping. I mean, obviously you had the backstory there, but still, it's all sentiment. Kind of like the one last shot thing. They're going to give it to Anderson Silva if he manages to knock off Israel Adesanya, because if he beats Adesanya, I mean, he's ranked back in like what, the top 6, top 5 by virtue of beating Adesanya. So yeah, Anderson's definitely getting the title shot. I think they're going to do it. They're going to play off the sentiment, the fact that he's a legend, getting his one last shot before retirement. It's a story. They could sell the hell out of that. They could totally sell the hell out of it. And yeah, Israel winning, like we all think is going to happen, he's getting the title shot. They've been pushing the shit out of that dude, pardon my language. But they expect big things and a big star making performance from him in this fight. So yeah, both guys, the winner's getting the title shot.
Fred.
Listen, I hate to make this a kumbaya, but it's hard to disagree with that. I think one way or the other. I mean, listen, on one hand, you got the ultimate middleweight, right? The legend of all legends, quite possibly the greatest of all time, barring the little steroid incident. And then you got the new guy who is presumably the exact same version of him. We're entering the matrix here. And I'm going to tell you another thing. I don't love the disdain that everybody has for Anderson, although I do like the intrigue that it's going to have going into this fight. And I'll tell you all another thing. If, as we have all said, if by some chance Anderson does get lucky and win this fight, I'm calling it right here, right now, he wins the belt. I think he beats either guy in the main event if he beats Israel Adesanya.
Very interesting. Very interesting stuff here. The separation is the same. 24 for Fred, 23 apiece around the board. So anyone could go following this question coming up right here. We are sticking around in Melbourne. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, really top-heavy card at the top. And with the co-main and main being so great and a feature for the middleweight division in its own right. But only five ranked fighters are on the card, I think, according to my count. And they did go to Adelaide 2 months ago. So, Fred, I will start with you. I don't think I've started off one with you, so let's go that route. With them going to Adelaide just a couple months ago, having Tuivasa and Pedro and Obviously, Mark Hunt's last fight on his contract doesn't dwell in this situation, but having all these guys on that card and them losing the way they did, with so little time leading up to this event in Melbourne, was that the right call at the end of the day by the UFC?
I mean, look, man, it obviously wasn't ideal, right? They had a lot of Australian stars just a couple months ago on that card. But you've got Robert Whittaker on the top of this card, the biggest star in Australia right now. And you got the new and upcoming biggest star from that region of the world. Is Israel New Zealand or Australian?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Either way, same region. They'll have him. It's a big deal there. Quite possibly their two biggest stars. And here's another thing, man. Most of the time when the UFC goes to these international markets, they don't give them an Anderson Silva. They be bull jiving on the big stars. So I think Anderson Silva coming to Australia is probably going to be a bigger deal than some of us might assume. You know what I'm saying? Even though he's a little older, most of those international cards, especially Australian cards, short of the Ronda Rousey thing, they don't get those legends of the sport usually. So I think you had to do it. It still ended up being a good deal. Not ideal, but like it is what it is. I ain't hating on it.
My guess.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think it's terribly it's not really ideal, but if you look up and down the card, I mean, it's still chock full of some good talent. You have, of course, Robert Whittaker, you have Israel Adesanya, and you have Nadia Kassam, who's another great local fighter. You have Jim Carute, he's 9-0. He's another person that you have to watch out for. Shane Young. So they still have a lot of local Australian talent on this card. Obviously, Taya Tuivasa, Tyson Pedro, those guys would have been nice to have peppered through the card. But I think at the end of the day, they're gonna live with the results, and I think this is gonna trend higher than I think a lot of people realize, because it isn't overwhelming when you look at it. But I think it's gonna deliver. I think it's gonna do pretty well.
Robert.
I mean, I don't think the Adelaide card really has much effect. I mean, when you look at the way pay-per-views trend and the way pay-per-views are bought, it's the casual fans usually that are driving the numbers up. And what the casual fan looks at is the main event and co-main event. They're not looking at the whole card like all of us will. They're not looking at all that stuff. They only want to know who's in the main event, who's in the possibly the co-main event. So yeah, you look at Whittaker and Gastelum, you look at Adesanya and Anderson Silva. If that's not selling you already, then you weren't buying the pay-per-view in the first place. As for who's on the card, I mean, you got enough talent, local talent from Australia, New Zealand on the card to satisfy those that are showing up. And quite frankly, they've been starving for a good pay-per-view with a hell of a headliner. The fans are going to show up in Australia regardless. They're going to show up to support their local people. In terms of buy rates and everything, it's going to sell regardless of what the undercard looks like based off the main event and the co-main event. So I don't think it was that big of a deal.
Mike P.
Yeah, so I got to see Whittaker fight here in Chicago at 225, and he had a huge fan base here. So I think when you look at 234, you get Australians GQ Sportsman of the Year, and then you guys talked about the casual fan. Everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, Anderson Silva's fighting. May have no idea who Stylebender is, and they're just gonna buy the pay-per-view based off of Anderson Silva fighting and see the young upcoming who we all think is the next Anderson Silva. So we're going to get more than enough in the co-main and the main event. And when you really look at it, I think having the other Australian guys who fought at Adelaide, it's just great for like those in the stands, right? Tai Tuivasa, crowd pleaser. Mark Hunt, crowd pleaser. Tyson Pedro, crowd pleaser. But we're not running and calling our cable providers, our pay-per-view providers to watch them all fight. But Anderson Silva, Robert Whittaker, we're going to do it regardless.
Okay. You guys certainly did not make this one easy on me. That's for damn sure. We have now a three-way tie at 32 and one person with 31. Pretty crazy. But Robert, I'm afraid you have 31.
It's okay.
However, man, I know that you do great work over with MMA to the MMA to the Max podcast, and I'm sure that we'll have you on again soon, man. Just off by 1 point.
Yeah, it's all right. Just means early bedtime.
Hey, man, you have a good one and enjoy that bedtime, man.
All right, hey guys, have fun. See you later.
Yeah. See you later, boss. Okay, down to 4. including myself. So technically down to 3. And that brings us to a rapid fire. Everyone going into this for 32. And switching promotions now to Bellator MMA, whose new European Fight Series will kick off this weekend. Includes Patricky Pitbull taking on former Bama lightweight champion Ryan Scope, who will be making his Bellator debut. New talent such as Terry Brazier and Fabian Edwards will also be on the card. Obviously, Fabian Edwards, the younger brother, I believe, of UFC welterweight Leon Edwards. Any intrigue in this event in Newcastle this weekend, Fred? I'll start with you. It serves as a pretty solid appetizer for that UFC pay-per-view, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts?
Listen, man, I'm not going to jive talk you. No. Not particular. Look, man, there's a lot of MMA to ingest these days, man. And some of these Bellator cards, I can't front, man. Some of the foreign UFC cards are a little hard to get through, to keep it a buck. But these Bellator cards, look, I will probably watch the co-main and the main if I'm not busy, or if something special happens, I'll make a point to catch it on Twitter. But yeah, man, when I can actually get a little free time to myself, I take it, man. This Bellator card, I will check the the results afterward and see if anything happened. But time is valuable these days, Jack. There's a lot of MMA on TV. I'll wait. We got a better card.
Understood, Mike S.
Yeah, I'm not particularly stoked for this card, and I should preface this, man, because I'm a pretty big Bellator guy too. But this just doesn't, man. This just ain't doing it for me. I'll catch the main card, but I don't know if it'll be live. I'll definitely catch the main card, but yeah, it doesn't do it for me, man. Honestly.
Mike P.
Well, I'm already nervous because I want to know if the broadcast is going to get interrupted by Peppa Pig over in UK. No, but I'm in agreement, and I'm in agreement only because next week you have 2 back-to-back events, and if you want to have an event before the UFC, bring us a little fire. Bring us something that we're really going to get excited for, to make us be like, damn, and we get Anderson Silva tomorrow, and we get Robert Whittaker tomorrow. Bellator's right there with the UFC. And I do think they're an amazing promotion, but I think next weekend I'll give all my attention to Bellator. I just won't do it on Friday.
All right. Awesome. Moving on to the finals. Fred is one, and obviously the other one's a Mike.
I didn't even get that joke at first.
Yeah, man. No, last week I had 2 Mikes on as well, Mike Heck and Mike Fidel. They're both good guys to have on. Mike Pendleton is moving on. Mike Straus, I will say goodbye. Off by 1, 39. The other 2 had 40. So
see you guys. It was fun.
Hey, man. Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Anytime, guys.
Later, brother. Have a good night, man.
You too. Take care, guys. See you, Mike.
And then there were 2. Can Fred do what Kyle could not, man? Kyle lost the final showdown week 1 with Mr. James Lynch, and Mike trying to make it 2 mics in a row.
All right.
Kyle out there making us look bad.
Hey, man, Kyle got to the final on a pretty stacked show that first week. But, however, this is the question that always gets him. It's one that is a mystery. We reset the scores back to 0, and off we go. So we've had fights announced beyond the first quarter, going into the second quarter already. Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa, one in particular, for April 27th in Miami. There's rumors going around, I don't know how true it is, that we'll get Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov in St. Petersburg on April 20th. However, those all come after the UFC's pay-per-view in April, UFC 236, which I don't know about you guys, but I haven't heard a damn thing about yet. Could you possibly, one of you, and I'll start with Mike, what title fight could we see at the top of that bill in April? If you need a second to think about it, I'll give it to you because it's a pretty on-the-spot question. But UFC 236 in April, the month after 235, with the welterweight and light heavyweight belts on the line. What division might make sense to put a belt on the line in?
The quick answer for me, just thinking because I don't want to lose time, would be DC. But coming off of what we just saw today, he says he's injured. Yes, it's February, but you got to think. I think the biggest reason why I would say DC I think we're all convinced right now that we still want to see that Brock Lesnar fight, right? So WrestleMania, I believe, is like late March, early April. It's not like Brock Lesnar isn't training or doing WWE, whatever. So I think he's in the gym. I think we've seen a physical difference in Brock, probably getting ready to return to the UFC. I think that would be my front runner. See if I can get DC maybe an extra million to headline 236. That would be my call.
Fred, what do you think?
All right, listen, you ain't giving us a whole bunch of options here, Jack. There ain't a whole lot of titles to pick from. You know what I'm saying? So
That's the point.
I'm going to throw you a curveball. And how can we get through an MMA podcast without mentioning the one and only Mr. Conor McGregor?
I knew it.
We're talking about doing Conor Cowboy. There's not a belt on the line, but you can't make a bigger fight without a strap of gold. I think they'll both be available. Will Conor be off of a suspension by then? I think it will run concurrent. He only got 6 months, right?
Yeah. April 6th.
There we go. So, hey, look, we either do that or Amanda Nunes versus Holly Holm for the 35. Would that be?
I believe that's slated for 237.
Oh, is it? Is that a fact now?
I don't know if it's official yet. I've actually even heard that it's far from done.
Okay, well, that's the only other thing. I mean, because to keep it a buck, I'm 15 and 25 for the women. Meh. Obviously, Habib's not going to be ready. So Conor Cowboy is the only fight I could plug in. Obviously, you got heavyweight, but then what are we doing with DC? Either he defends against Stipe. Brock is the big money fight that we all want, but who the hell knows what's going on with Brock? So I'm just going to have to throw a curveball and say I want to see Conor McGregor. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens because, you're right. There's not a lot of options there. Yep. If Conor and Cowboy are available, they're going to do more numbers than most belts anyway. So.
Yeah, that's the point of the mystery question, gentlemen. A little bit of a head scratcher, a difference thinker. But I will have to say, thanks to both of you for coming on. You guys both did awesome. Obviously, deserving of being here, mano a mano towards the end. But our winner this week for the second week in a row, Mike Pendleton.
Thanks. All right, listen. I thought you had it. Anytime anyone uses Conor, you win.
that was my ace in the hole, man. Was pulling out C-Mac.
Right. and here's the thing, I would go with that too, but WME era, they haven't done a paper for the most part. I don't believe since they took over, they haven't done a pay-per-view main event with even an interim belt. And,
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I would have punched myself in the face if I used an interim belt to win this. So yeah, thanks DC. Plus, you got to think about it. If John fights in March, DC fights in April, we can give them both some time off, relatively close to each other. We could book them for either International Fight Week or August.
Not a bad idea, man. Not a bad idea. Thank you guys both for coming on, man. A worthy winner in Mike, and now we got 4 winners in the book. Moving on, next week we'll be post Melbourne and looking ahead to a stacked weekend at the Mohegan Sun with Bellator and the UFC's debut on linear ESPN. So don't miss it next week, and until then, signing off with these guys. Mike, you got anything to say now that you have that FaceTime that you get for winning? The floor is yours if you got anything to say.
I'm just gonna go back to the first question of the night. We were talking about Marlon Moraes and TJ and Cejudo.
Yeah.
Think about this. We all want to know who TJ is fighting next. Who does Ali Abdelaziz want to fight? Because he represents Marlon and Cejudo.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, all my guys get title shots. All my guys. Could Ali pull off Marlon, Cejudo, back-to-back, both beat TJ, and just become the king of title shots here?
Man, only time will tell, and I assume that we will find out in short order. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. For those listening, you can catch us on iTunes, so Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, anywhere that your podcast consumer heart desires. Until next week, we'll see you then.